Hello, it's Lois here from Lois and Morgana Davidson Art, and today I'm going to be showing you how I painted this atmospheric loose watercolour landscape using a limited palette: indigo, Prussian blue, sepia, burnt sienna and yellow ochre. And I've tried to keep it nice and simple and yet to suggest a certain amount of complexity in the planes of land stretching off towards the distance. Today I'm not using a particular reference photograph. I just looked at similar scenes on a royalty-free site, Pixabay, and sort of absorbed how they worked. And so I'm putting together a scene inspired by those. And the first thing I do is to quickly sketch out a very simple line work sketch to position the horizon line, the distant trees, the plains of land, and any sort of foreground trees. Just putting them in very lightly with the pencil, and this gives me a roadmap to follow. Although as I paint, I always build flexibility in my approach so that if something happens that looks different or that I like the look of, I will follow that rather than being too rigid in my painting plans. I'm going to use the wet in wet method, and I'm going to wet the page all over. This is Milford watercolour paper, 15 by 11 inches or 38 centimetres by 28 centimetres. It's taped to my board with ordinary decorator's masking tape, and my board is an angle of about 20 to 30 degrees. So the paper's nice and wet. I've given it a few seconds for the water to soak in, and this is a mixture of yellow ochre and burnt sienna to create the glow on the horizon, in the sky and across the land, leaving some unpainted strips of unpainted white paper for highlights. Putting in the first colour for the land, and that's some sepia, keeping my brushstrokes horizontal. The sky is mostly Prussian blue with some indigo and some sepia. Angling the brushstrokes up very slightly, allowing a bit more sepia to be introduced into the wash. You can see that the wash is sort of running down the page and starting to blend with that lovely golden light, softening and diffusing. Now I've mixed a really rich mixture of burnt sienna, Prussian blue and indigo using the corner and tips of my wash brush. I'm putting in this lovely dry paint for distant trees across the horizon line. The rich dry paint will stay where I put it on the damp wash, but it will soften and diffuse, and I can clean up that edge with my 3/4 inch flat brush, clean and damp, just to keep that horizon line nice and sort of clean and soft. Putting in some rich strong paint with my dark across the tape in the foreground, just to begin putting in reeds and foreground suggestions. And introducing a little bit of dark at the base of my middle ground trees. This is my palette knife, and I'm using it to scrape through the rich paint. When I scrape through it, it does one of two things. It'll either scrape back to the white of the paper or the colour underneath, or where the paint's a bit wetter, it'll create a little sort of indentation in the paper, and the paint will flow back into it and I'll get some darker lines. But whatever happens, I'm using the palette knife to draw through the paint and to create my tree trunks and branches. And then I can do the same to create some reeds and grasses and suggestions of all that detail in the foreground without actually painting any detail. I've laid my board flat and made a few adjustments, and just before it dries I'm going to use some ordinary fine ground table salt to create a few little extra flourishes and some texture in the foreground. I'm sprinkling a little bit of salt into the damp paint. It mustn't be too wet or too dry or the effects won't work properly, and now I can leave it to dry completely. And while it's drying, it's a great opportunity for me to plug my book, Landscapes in Watercolour, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner. There are a couple of links in the description below if you're interested. There's lots of tips and techniques and 10 tutorials, 5 line and wash and 5 pure watercolour. So please follow the link if you're interested. Here's the dry painting. I've raised it back up to 20 degrees and I'm going to brush off any remaining salt crystals from the foreground that didn't dissolve. And you can see the salt's given me some lovely effects. The sun is streaming into my studio, which is lovely, but it's bleaching out these colours a bit. But of course, I'll show you a better representation of the colours at the end of the painting. Now it's time for me to bring out some of the detail using the wet on dry method. So that's wet paint onto the dry page. You can see that the marks are staying where I put them, so I can get some nice crisp detail for my middle ground tree. Painting over my pencil lines and around them using my rigger brush and a dark mixture of sepia with a touch of indigo in it, a bit of burnt sienna. Flicking out the brush to get some nice fine lines towards the end of the branches, and I can work across all my trees in the same way. And you can leave your winter tree like this, or you can use the side of a brush to scrape a little bit of dry paint. That's too dark, I'll get rid of that in a minute. A little bit of dry paint over the ends of the twigs, and this just gives the effect of increasing the density of fine twigs towards the end of the branches. I can dab out or lift out anything that goes in too dark, but I'm just dragging down the impression of some fine twigs using the same colour but quite a dry mix. I've tested it on a piece of scrap paper first, starting from the ends of the twigs excuse me, and just dragging down. I'm going to put some clean water on that to quickly dab it off to lift off where those got a little bit too dark. This is my size 2 quill brush, and I can go in with a slightly darker mixture once I'm confident that I've got it just about right. It is quite light value, but on top of the existing paint that's there, it just shows up as this sort of mass of fine twigs at the ends of all these branches. I can go back in while the paint's damp with my rigger brush and just pull out a few more twigs, connect some of the twigs and branches that are already there, and just work a little bit more on the tree just to build up the density around the ends of the branches. And I think I'm just about done, so removing the tape gives me this nice clean white border. I always enjoy this part because it shows the painting off how it really looks, rather than all those brush strokes that are taken across the side of the painting to keep them nice and loose. And here's a better colour version of the painting, and you can see how the Prussian blue and indigo have worked together beautifully in the sky, and the yellow ochre and burnt sienna have given me that lovely glow. If you look at the close-up, you can see the salt effects that I've got in the foreground, as well as the simplicity of brush strokes and leaving the unpainted paper to create the different planes of land in the distance, and just to suggest the glow of light on the fields. Well, I hope you found that helpful. If you did, then please give us a thumbs up And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, I invite you to do so. It's completely free and it really does help us with the YouTube algorithm. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please hop over to Patreon, where for a small monthly fee you can get all sorts of exclusive content, access to a community chat group where you can share your work, a monthly Q&A session where you can ask me anything, as well as advert-free versions of these YouTube videos. And last but by no means least, a special thank you to everybody that does already support us in our Patreon groups. We really do appreciate you. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.